Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Media Show on the Pod TV Network. I'm Nick Palavita. I'll be one of your hosts for today's presentation, and of course, we're going to discuss all things relating to the media, including what's going on in the Pod TV Network. So, with that, we're going to bring in Mark Lee, speaking of somebody who knows a lot about the Pod TV Network. So,
Yeah, we got a new show that'll start in November, so that was exciting having that meeting with TJ Walker, and it sounds like he'll have some interesting news reports. So we'll start that on, I believe it's November 3rd, that first Monday. So we're talking a week from today. We'll start a new show here on the network and everything like that. So that'll be good to get his material because he'll be like the angry geeks and he'll be presenting it to us after the fact and not airing live as some of these shows like this one and the new show do and others. But it should be a lively discussion. So I've watched a couple of his shows and on his YouTube channel. It looks like he's got some interesting content. And all along those lines, and that looks like that was one of your discoveries. And I know we've got some other shows that are being discussed, as I mentioned to you and TJ. I've been talking to one of Viviana's people that is in that thing that we all can't escape and everything like that. And that's that thing of aging. So she's working with a young lady that is in the Virginia area where she's based at, and she is a agent consultant and works with a lot of the agencies there, I believe, in the Tidewater area that deal with agents. So I've been talking to her about possibly doing a show around people that are of a certain age that are maybe doing extraordinary things that people wouldn't expect from folks that are maybe in that 65 plus crowd and everything like that, or maybe even will go 75 plus and all along those lines. As different people have different ideas of aging. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about, and I know it'll be interesting and all along those lines, is I was watching yesterday 60 Minutes. Don't always watch it and everything, but I was watching yesterday, and two episodes, well, actually all three episodes caught my attention because one was about Maduro and whether Trump is going after Maduro in the plans of invading the country of Venezuela. The other two were more about things that we talk about here on the network and everything like that. So there was a gentleman, and I'm trying to remember his name, but he's considered like the longevity guru and everything like that. So he's got a program, a very costly program that will help you live until well into your 90s and maybe even into your hundreds. And he's talking about like putting together this life plan. So next time we have Dr. Patmos on, he was saying something that you oftentimes say, which is that we don't talk enough about certain things in our public school system. And he said he does not remember a course when he was in college and he was studying about medicine and stuff like that, a course on nutrition, and he definitely didn't remember any courses on exercise. So he put together this exercise and this nutrition model and all along those lines. So I'm trying to get the gentleman's name and also try to maybe even get him on our network. But he was thinking that a lot of these things are not taught and all in that space, even the impact of relationships and all in that way in terms of our health, even though we've talked about the impact of relationship quite a bit here on this network, whether it's been on Coco show or on the online dinner party or a number of other shows, that it does come up as a conversation point. But I'm thinking that he was talking because they were asking about how people that are in the medical field are critical of this particular doctor, and he was wondering how many of them had actually done the same studying that he had done. And we know that Dr. Patmos has, but he might be one of those people that Dr. Patmos considers a quack and everything like that, because he is definitely making a whole heap of money off of this money and this program that he's got in longevity. And like I said, it is very much a whole notion of very costly, because I want to say that some of the programs were close to like $100,000 or something like that.
wow. Well, he is making some good money, but actually, that's a good idea to bring to the network as ageism. As the baby boomers get older, Mark, there was something I was seeing on TikTok or something. Some doctor was being interviewed from 60 Minutes and said, once you get age 75, it's straight down. In other words, if you're not exercising or you're not following certain programs, your life expectancy goes down. Now, in pension world where I work in, and with insurance companies which we work in, we do know a little bit about the demographics. First of all, he's right. At least empirically, I don't see it at age 75. I do see it at age 80. Mm-hmm. Once somebody hits age 80, for whatever reason, the faculties aren't there. In other words, you start seeing a loss. And then we hit age 90, the mortality statistics of 50% every year. In other words, so the odds of living to 91, there's about half. And then we're 91, the odds of living to 92 is about 50%, et cetera. The mortality statistics flatten out at age 90. So by the time you live age 100, you actually beat a lot of the odds to do that. Well, here's the problem.
And by the way, this gentleman's name, and maybe Sasha knows him, but his name is Peter Attia, Attia, and they say he's a Canadian-American author, physician, and researcher known for his work in longevity medicine, and he's the author of Outlive, The Science and Art of Longevity, and he was actually born and raised in Toronto, Ontario, but he's a Stanford, Johns Hopkins, and NIH-trained physician.
Is he going to be on the network then, or does he have a show that we can put on?
Well, he's got his own YouTube, and I'm going to reach out to him and see if we can't get him on. Like I said, he was on 60 Minutes and everything like that. And like I said, he's got this very expensive program, but he's also planning, and maybe this is where we can tell him that we can help him reach his audience, even though he's got millions of followers. But he is also talking about putting out, because he does realize that a lot of what he does, including asking for people to do a routine. And when I say routine, I'm thinking it's like annual, if not semi-annual, MRI to discover what's going on with your body and everything like that. But he is got an app that he's getting ready to release, I think later on this year. And of course, the app will be for those that can't afford those $100,000 or whatever the more expensive costs are and everything like that. Because apparently he's got a whole morning ritual, afternoon ritual, and does this whole thing along those lines. So like I said, he was a fascinating person that I just stumbled across as I was watching that particular show that's been on for decades and everything, 60 Minutes. The other one that I found interested in that show, and maybe we can find a person that wants to do a show on the network in this space as well, even though I think the Angry Geeks sometimes touch on it, and I know that others touch on it as well, because we have people that like magic and stuff like that. But there is a guy, Oz Perlman, there was the other featured person that apparently, and this was scary because he had a moment where even the anchor on 60 Minutes was saying it looked like he wanted to punch him, and I agree, it did look like he wanted to punch him, because he's got some sort of routine which he does, this mentalist Oz Perlman, where he can figure out your PIN number. And, you know, PIN numbers are very important.
Oh, sure.
Or bank, your bank's number, but he did it to a couple of football players, because he also goes and does these things for some of the football and other athletic teams and everything. But he figured out, I forgot the athlete, but he figured out the athlete's coach's PIN number, and he also figured out Joe Rogan's PIN number. So I'm going like, that'd be scary if somebody did a mentalism kind of thing, and they figured out your PIN number without you telling it to him. So I don't know how you would feel if you would sit there and he did a trick, and all of a sudden he told you that you're.
I really don't want him to figure out my PIN number on TV and tell everybody that.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
I would like to see him with other people.
He didn't have to flip the paper around and reveal the PIN number, but
if he wants to with other people, I don't care. But, you know, really don't want my PIN numbers out there. That's like can be very dangerous. But yeah, that would be an interesting show. Yeah, I'm hoping that we can add some more interesting shows onto our network this year. And we'll start with TJ Walker. But I think as the baby boomers get older, it's going to be more and more important for them. In other words, longevity. How do you do it?
Right.
Because they're going to be dropping like flies. And some of them make it 100. June Lockhart apparently just died. I don't know if you saw that.
Who did?
June Lockhart. She was the wife of on Lost in Space, and she was also on Lassie. Okay. You know, because you've interviewed a couple of the mothers. You interviewed Richie Cunningham on Happy Days' mother. Remember that?
Yes.
And you interviewed the mother on the Waltons.
Right.
Okay, so you apparently get into the ladies that are in these shows, and they were both on the online dinner party, which I thought was pretty cool.
Oh yeah, we had some amazing guests on the online dinner party, and actually he even had Maestro Curry, who's not a spring chicken either. I think he's like in his mid 70s and something like that, but he's still and he's actually brought up an interesting point which I did not think about, which is that conductors live longer, and they might even maybe scientists can do a study, but because they are so absorbed in the work that they're doing, and they're studying classical music and a number of other things, that they have a track record of living well into their 90s, and sometimes even conducting well into their 90s as well. So it seems like if you want to live a long life, you might want to think about conducting a band or an orchestra and everything like that. So they have a good track record of living longer.
Yes, that is true. The conductors do live longer. I saw the study on that, and for some reason they'll outlive their orchestra. So, but like I said, that whole study of ageism is not really, you're just not going to find it on regular TV. So it's perfect for the pod TV network, especially as people tend to get older. It's just going to be one of those things. So hopefully we'll get some programs on in that direction. So we'll fill the niche programming that. And speaking of niche program, sorry I had to leave David Walker's show early. How did it go? How did it wrap up at the end? Did everybody
a good discussion? There was a little bit of a fight between David and Peter and Jacoby, of course, because I think Jacoby was trying to get a issue in or a thought in and everything like that. But other than that, it was a good discussion. They even got Dr. Sharif involved and a number of others. But I think that there was trying to be a conversation around the impact of some of these things, including whether no part of the discussion was around Social Security and whether some of the illegal folks from other countries that are being dubbed as illegal aliens are getting benefits that they don't deserve. So I think that's part of where that conversation was going and everything, if I recall correctly. But yeah, they were having a little bit of a heated discussion by the time that you turned it over to me. But it was a fun discussion. I think everybody was pleased and they agreed that they all love David. David's one of our stars and everything like that, even when folks disagree with him, as Jacoby has done in the past, and even Rick, they still like him as one of our star attractions. You know, one of our other star attractions will be coming up in about an hour, that being Miss Irene and everything like that. And I know she's got the timeshare show and everything like that. And that being said, we're going to do a new model with her in next year. And I think she'll be announcing that, but I'll give a preview where it'll still be, I think, an hour-long show, but it'll be 30 minutes of her discussing what's going on, but then also 30 minutes of what they're calling the resource center, which will be like some people that are involved in timeshares, but they might have businesses, and they'll be discussing their businesses in that second half an hour in what's now being called the resource center.
Yeah, and that's been a good show for us because it's really, again, it fits that niche audience, people that buy timeshares, and some of them get timeshares they really shouldn't buy. Some of them get good timeshares, but I think those days have passed. So you got the good timeshares and the bad timeshares. Hey,
because I was only catching part of it. Just tell me, what was the discussion you were having? Because Nick here was asking me, and I was saying I thought it had something to do with Social Security, but I'm not going to try to explain what your argument with David was and whether you got an answer that you wanted or not. But that's what he was asking me as to how it went. And I said it was a good discussion, but I know y'all had a lively discussion, and there was some back and forth. It wasn't like a food fight, as some people call it, but it was still a lively discussion.
No, it was just fine. I mean, basically, I get tired of hearing the argument that the Democrat Party is trying to pay for undocumented immigrants health care. Then I pointed out, because Rick chimed in and talked about the law, then I point out the law again, and then they went into the argument that, well, because there's a law doesn't mean people are following it. So it's basically an anarchist argument of, hey, look, just because there's a law, that doesn't mean people are following it. That can be for anything, shoplifting, so on and so forth. Hence the reason why, because nothing is 100%. Okay, if you want to have that discussion that nothing is 100%, then give me percentages, because that's where data is. But the problem is, then it went down the idea of, well, this is how it really went down. And I'm like, okay, we know the back history and know the understanding. Give me percentages. If it's 1%, are we going to shut down a complete program over less than 1%, or 1% of shrink, as they call it in retail, if something's stolen? Well, less than 1% or even 1% of shrink in retail is really an impossibility. Usually shrink or theft or anything like shoplifting and stuff, you're looking at about a 3% hit on shoplifting on any store, roughly. But they went into the argument of, hey, I'm going to give you this anecdote. Well, the anecdote isn't data. Okay, well, I'm going to give you this other little bit of anecdote. That's not data. Tell me a percentage. Tell me something that we can discuss and figure a way that, hey, look, if it's less than 1% or if it's 1%, does that justify killing the whole program? That's where I tried to get to, but then it became so contentious.
So I have numbers. I just looked it up while you were talking, and the numbers are nobody freaking knows. Nobody freaking knows. The Republican House Ways and Means Committee estimated 6.4 million undocumented immigrants have illegally obtained health coverage. That's obviously ridiculous. That's a crazy overestimate, but we don't know what, and we can't even agree on the number of undocumented immigrants in the U.S. Libs say, maybe it's 15 million. My friend Lance, who's super Trumpy, says 30 million, which is ridiculous, but that's a big frickin' difference.
Yeah,
you're tangentially involved in the healthcare business. What do you think? Are there millions and millions of undocumented immigrants who have Obamacare?
I'm not involved in the healthcare business. Peter does some healthcare work, but I don't do any at all. All the business that we do is qualified plans, which I'm going to another qualified plan meeting in 5 minutes. I set up pension plans, retirement plans for people. That's about it. And then I go out and set up another pension. It's really boring work. But as I say, boring work pays the bills.
And you do it mostly for very affluent people, right?
Well, affluence is a very amorphous concept that you need to discuss. Okay.
But what I'm asking is, has an undocumented immigrant ever come to you?
Undocumented immigrants are not my clients. Okay, I can tell you that right now. Okay. The bottom 50%, not my clients. Okay. Top 10%, yes. Now the question is, where in the top 10%? Because I used to work in the top 1/10 of 1%. Those were very wealthy, what they call high net worth individuals, or UHNWs, ultra high net worth individuals. That's a totally different clientele than what I work with right now, which are high income, but not necessarily high net worth people. And they operate differently. In other words, one of my clients founded a company you guys are probably familiar with back in the States. He founded Coca-Cola. Now it was the Candler family. Now their names have changed because of marriages, but the Candler family is well known in Atlanta because there's Candler Park. When I met them in Palm Beach, they go, we're part of the Candler family. No, I never heard of them. Have you heard of Candler Park? I said, sure, it's in Atlanta. I said, well, they founded Coca-Cola. Oh yeah, that family, duh.
So I assume you lost your high net worth clients.
I lost all my high net worth clients in 2000, Rick, when your friend George Bush and the Republicans decided to repeal the federal estate tax. They had a tax in your country, our country, that kept wealthy people from compounding their wealth. It was called the federal estate tax. And it was up to 55% of their net worth when they die would go to taxes. Guess what? They got it repealed. And guess what? I got fired. So I had to figure out something else to do. And I work with high income people because they don't repeal the income tax. And that's setting up pensions. So pension plans are for high income, but not necessarily high net worth people. Another client I had was the president of Philip Morris. And he had homes in Sailfish Point, which a lot of people don't even know where it is, and had homes in Admiral's Cove, which a lot of people do know. It's in Palm Beach. But he was a high net worth person. Another client I had was the president of Bausch & Lomb, and he had homes in Martha's Vineyard. I've been to all these people's homes because it was a very high touch, high feel relationship that you build with clients when you work with them. And then I had another client, let's see, President Bausch, Kimberly Clark, President Kimberly Clark, and the founder of Dunkin' Donuts. Now, those are all high net worth people, as opposed to high income people, which are, people making $500,000 to $1.5 million a year, not necessarily high net worth, but they're doing well financially. Now, the problem is,
and everything like that. Speaking of well enough, and speaking of the media,
yeah, I'm going to have to go in about 5 minutes. I got another.
Before Nick goes, I got a question for Nick.
Yeah.
So you've been dealing with rich people for decades.
Yes.
I feel like in the 20th century, rich people were less dickish. Is that true, or have rich people gotten worse?
No, they're actually
Everybody's gotten worse, including.
Well, it's like Jimmy Kimmel. Jimmy Kimmel would be a high net worth person, I would imagine. He's probably worth at least 30 million or more. But is he a jerk? No,
He's a great guy.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Most of the high net worth people, like it or not, they're nice people. But think about it, Rick. They have the world by the chutzpah. One thing they don't worry about is finances. They got plenty of money. So the thing is, they're not your regular person, and so most of them are actually pretty nice people to work with. The problem is the system you have since Reagan and post Eisenhower skews the benefits to them, and more so than working people and poor people. They get basically screwed, and they don't even take basic courses to figure out they're getting screwed. So let's go to the bottom 50%. They own 2% of the assets. Okay. Then you go to the top 50%. They own 98%. And the top 1% owns 40% of that. So you see, you have this big skewing of all the money into a very small group of people's hands. And part of it's the tax system doesn't allow for a level playing field. We don't have a level playing field. I'm sorry. So the No King's March should have been with people like Elon Musk, Steve Schwartzman. I go through the list. A lot of them are very quiet. You won't even know who they are. Elon Musk has a big profile, but a lot of them, and those are the real kings of America. It's not John Trump. It's all the other extremely wealthy people that lucky that the system's all in their favor. So what can I say? If you're born rich, your kids will be rich. You're born poor, your kids are going to be poor. In the United States, that's just the way it is. And you're screwed. Okay. So find out who your parents are, because that's going to be 98% of you. And all this Horatio Alger's rags to riches. Yeah, it happens in the entertainment industry every now and then, in sports every now and then. But the vast majority, and it doesn't happen. As they say in Pawn Stars, it ain't happening. So they'll highlight that 1 out of 1,000 who made it. And they won't show the 999 that just had the rear kicked out of them. Look at the entertainment industry. Come on, Rick. 1 out of 1,000.
So all the money's being squeezed out of the entertainment industry.
Yeah, right. Right. But it used to be a great leveler. In other words, people could go in the entertainment industry and have a lottery ticket, a shot. Yep. It's like the NCAA, that your odds are probably about 1 out of 1,000.
Yep.
And it's
there's another way that you can make money, and I was wondering, because this is actually in Jatovi's wheelhouse and everything like that. But I did see a video, and Rick, you may have some thoughts around this as well. But apparently, I remember as a youngster in the 70s and the 80s, sports cards were very popular, and apparently the golden age of sports collecting is coming back now. I guess because of people like the pitcher/hitter from the Dodgers and a number of others as well. So are we seeing a golden age of sports card collecting? And can you make a heap of money if you sit there?
Yeah. So I end up seeing the prices of sports cards right now. Let's see. We've got an RJ Harvey rookie card, $165. Let's see. Lamar Jackson, $488. Yeah, so I see sports cards selling for, $500 to $2,000, and they come in a plastic case. So no human has ever touched the card, because if you do, you might accidentally knock $200 off the value of the card.
That is very true.
And the cards are fancy now. They got holograms, and they got some of them are like molded with textures, and it's a huge industry.
Sounds like a huge industry. Do they have the QR codes on them to maybe get you some additional benefits or something like that? So I don't know,
because I don't own any of these cards. I used to have a box of 1,000 cards for one particular quarterback that was a prop left over from a TV bit. And those cards were worth 1 cent a piece. So I got rid of those.
Do you have any cards, Jatovi?
I mean, they're just like comic books. I got a ton of comic books. I don't really have any sports card.
Yeah, comic books are very similar to cards, where you need to put them in a special case because they're professionally graded on a scale like 0 to 10, and the difference between a 9.6 and a 10 might be $100,000 in the value of like a Spider-Man #1.
Yeah, that makes sense. I want to come back to media just for a second and everything, because apparently, and you have alluded to it a couple of times, but Rick, that is, and as have you, Jacoby, but apparently President Trump's favorability and his ratings are going down, particularly among groups that were supportive of him, because we know that he had a significant amount, as part of the reason that he won, of support among the Hispanic adults. And apparently that's fallen dramatically since his inauguration, probably because of a lot of this ICE stuff and all along those lines. This is according to the new Associated Press. Newark Center for Public Affairs research conducted earlier in this month, October. So they found that 25% of Hispanic adults have a somewhat or very favorable view of the president, which is down from 44% when the poll was conducted prior to Trump taking office. And the percentage of Hispanic adults who now believe the country is going in the wrong direction has ticked up 63% in March to 73% in October. So he made some inroads into the Hispanic population, receiving about 43% of their support in 2024, up from 35% in 2020, but it might be down. It might even be less than that.
All this does is it gives news shows something to talk about. The testing is very unreliable, very volatile. Like Kamala Harris was and Hillary Clinton, they were both kind of favored to, if not win, at least make it closer than it turned out to be. And we don't really know. The Hispanics that now don't like him, we're going to have to see what happens in the midterms, whether that's a real thing, whether it, I've been betting on Trump favorability, just a few bucks here and there. You can bet what his approval rating is going to be at the end of every month, and I think it's a pretty safe bet that it doesn't budge. It stays in the 43s. 44s, no matter what crazy crap he does, that his base, it remains his base. And now the shutdown is going to end up being the longest in history if it lasts one more week, which it will, because nobody wants to open the government right now. When 42 million Americans stop getting food aid, will that make a difference? Will his popularity drop into the 42s and the 41s? I don't frickin' know, but he's got pretty solid support.
Well, there's a major.
He's a terrible fucking president.
There's a major event going on, and this is up to Joey's alley as well and everything. But the NAB show, I think that's the National Association of Broadcasters, is a big thing, and they just had their New York edition in the last week or two. But one of the things that they were tackling was this notion of how to deal with AI and can the media regain trust in the age of AI and misinformation? Because there's a lot of people that are asking, I know I've asked some even on this network, loaded questions and things like that. So there was even a panel called The Future of News, AI, News Revenues, and Risk and the Policy Response. And about 70% of newsrooms have already implemented AI, raising concerns about copyright, consent, compensation, and the credibility of the information and everything like that.
So the short answer is no, nobody has credibility anymore. Everybody figures out that like it takes a few times seeing some AI video where you get fooled. And then you're like, oh, well, this is bullshit. This must be AI, or this might be AI. And so people get sophisticated and learn to be skeptical of everything. But that taints everything too. So even human reported stories, people are less willing to invest in them because it might turn out to be bullshit.
And that's basically what one of these guys that was there, something called On Message, which I think is a company. Their vice president, Tommy Binion, said, because he was asking the question, how concerned are you about AI stealing or reproducing journalism and local news stories that are published online? And he said the concerned are very concerned. Responses added up to 76% of the respondents, which is definitely, I agree with him, that's sky high.
It already happened. It's already happening. The magazines, when we 20 years ago, 30 years ago, like my wife would get Vogue magazine. It was an inch thick. The September issue had 700 pages, with 500 of those pages being advertising. Now, an issue of Vogue might be 150 pages with, 1/5 as much advertising as they had, 20, 30 years ago. The magazines are done. The newspapers struggle. I just saw the LA Times circulation numbers. City of LA has maybe 8 million people. They, on a daily basis, they only have 340,000 subscriptions.
Oh, wow.
That's 4% of the population. Newspapers used to be indispensable. Now, very frickin' dispensable.
Well, speaking of being indispensable, what is our take on people that are cracking back on the reporters and everything like that? Because I'm thinking about even Carolyn Levitt, the press secretary. She fired back when a reporter asked her how Budapest was picking that as the site of a summit meeting with Putin, and she basically said, "Your mom." And then another was Trump's response in Texas that only a truly evil person would ask him, as one person did about the U.S. response to flooding in the state. So it sounds like a lot of our leaders are pushing back on the media and giving them those childish insults.
That's what Trump has done to our society. He's made it okay to do this. It was never done in the past. It only started under Trump. And the reason it does well is because of Trump. People think it's cool. This is why Gavin Newsom went down the road that he did and started trying to troll Trump. But yeah, we're at a race to the bottom now. When respect is lost, people will attack each other. That's where we are. And that is due to it coming top down. It is the Trump effect.
So every previous president felt the weight of the entire U.S. population on their shoulders. Mm-hmm. How is this going to affect, people in Idaho, people in Florida, people in Missouri? Trump is like, well, nothing I do is going to change the picture of my support and my disapproval. That my haters are still going to hate me. The people who love me are still going to love me. I can do whatever I want. I don't have to be conciliatory. People love when I rub it in. My people, we love causing liberal tears. So Carolyn Levitt says, gets asked a question, who made this decision? Carolyn Levitt says, your mama. And then libs go crazy, and the Trump White House loves it because they have impunity. Yep. It's a reinforcing cycle. Trump behaves like a jackass. The libs go crazy. His supporters love that the libs are upset, and it keeps going.
Yep. And then one of the things that people said that they like about Trump is that he does something. They don't care what he does. He could burn down the house. Oh, he did something, so I support him for that. And what Rick is talking about is another reason why people support him. They make liberals mad. So being unapologetic and making liberals mad because he's actually doing bad things, they don't care about what he does. It doesn't matter. They're just making liberals mad, and he's doing something.
And the last two Democratic presidents kept their heads down. You got no drama Obama. Obama felt like it would be disruptive for the first African-American president to get involved in a lot of fighty stuff. So he tried to lean back. And then Biden, old as hell, with a speech impediment. The White House, his people were like, we just can't let people see him too often because every time he goes in public, there's a chance he might stumble over his words. So they pulled back public appearances. If they'd been smarter, if they could see the future, they should have put him out there every week, and he should have sat there in the Oval Office and said, look, I'm old as hell. I'm going to stumble over my words, but I still know what I'm doing. Just deal with it. And would that have worked? Probably better than the way it went.
Hey, I've got good news for you, Rick, and everything. And this was from an article in the New York Times, and with that lovely price walls. I can't read the whole article and everything like that,
Right,
but they're
right.
saying that debate shows are having a moment. Here comes the Democrats. So they're saying as millions tune into hyper partisan face-offs on YouTube or TikTok, can the left find its own Charlie Kirk? So they're basically talking about a number of these shows, similar to what we have on this network and similar to what you've got and everything like this. So they're saying that these type of shows are having their moment, particularly on social media like YouTube and TikTok.
This is the thing that, again, says that the right has a great messaging apparatus. Charlie Kirk has been out there for a particular time. Charlie Kirk wasn't the only one. There are others that have been doing it longer than Charlie Kirk that have been out there and talking to these college campuses, talking to adults, going on these shows and actually holding these things. But because Charlie Kirk was on the right, you know what? He got a lot of backing. And he got that apparatus going. And people started talking about him as if he was the God to the only person people who would talk to campus. For example, there's a guy named Destiny. Destiny goes out to campuses and talks. He does that regularly. He talks not only to adults, not only to college kids, but also adults. Charlie Kirk only focused on college kids. You got the Dean, I forget Dean's last name. He has his show. His show has basically been going for about 4 or 5 years. Well, about 5 years. It's been going a while. But he does the 1 versus 100, where he actually takes callers from not only TikTok, from not only all these other places, and they'll call in, and he just looks for Trump supporters to debate Trump supporters about Trump. And there's one of the kids who's now showing up on all the different places. He was on a CNN show the other day. He was on he was actually debating one of Charlie Kirk's best friends. I can't think of his name right now, but there are individuals out there that have been doing this on the left for a very long time. Mehdi Hassan, he's not technically on the left, but Mehdi Hassan has been around for decades. And he does the same thing Charlie Kirk has been doing.
And you mentioned Destiny and everything like that. This article actually mentions Destiny as well, because they said on a recent Saturday night, more than 200 people crammed into a Los Angeles studio to watch Stephen Bonale, known online as the progressive streamer Destiny, debate supporters of President Trump. The attendees each paid $39 to be there, grew excited when a behavioral therapist in a Trump t-shirt took the stage to criticize the far left as hypocritical and fragmented. The only president ever made, he argued, was conceding the 2020 election. And it looks like this was actually a brother that was up there making that argument and everything like that. So yeah, you're right. Destiny is doing the same thing that Kirk was doing.
But we're like we're like a double-A team. Where will somebody ever rise out of pod TV and make it to the big leagues of doing this stuff? I don't know.
No, I thought you were talking about the Democrat Party being a double-A team. Yes, in terms of messaging, that's it. But in terms of us being a double-A team, no, we're not. We're like a Pineapple League. We're like way down.
But even the Pineapple League can make it and everything, because I do know for a fact that there are conversations going on between this network and Fox, but that's over a very conservative show. And I can't say that Sasha and Jonathan and them may not get a crack at being at least a guest. They've been guests on other people's show, and as I've said on several times, if you go to podcast guests,
look at us. Like, I'm old, Sasha's old. It's tough to get put on stuff when it's not.
Yeah, really, but that's what I'm saying. But Ivan is in his 20s or 30s, I think, because he's definitely younger and everything. And that's the other person that's featured on the.
But also, you got to get an agent. If you want to be a pundit, you got to sign up with a public speaking.
No, you don't. No, you don't. I just told y'all about podcast guests and Matchmaker FM. If you set up a profile, there will be people that will come to you, just like I go to get some of the guests that we've had on this network on those things.
What is, Rick? We do not have the impact. We do not have the viewership to be considered for these big time shows.
Yeah.
That's where people want eyeballs. The media now is all about eyeballs. We all know that.
Yeah.
And if we're only getting 10 people to watch the show, nobody's coming to the people at 10 people. Like this guy here, this Adam Mockler, great dude. He's going around. He's been debating people for a long time. He has, as you see, 1.7 million followers. And he's debating this guy.
This is someone who constantly escalates the rhetoric, and is calling Democrats vile vermin, enemy from within, fascist, communists.
But what are they calling Trump, though? They're calling him Hitler. They're calling him a Nazi.
J.D. Vance is calling him Hitler?
But he took
Which other
responsibility.
Democrat?
But that's what I'm saying. You're not letting me finish,
Democrat?
Adam. Come on, dude.
My name is Adam Mockler, and it's time for America to talk about the issues. That's why today I'm seated across from a Trump supporter who is here to chat about America's biggest concerns. This is Vashon, a Chicago activist, also known as the Chicago Conservative. How you doing today, man?
Pretty good, man. Thanks for having me today.
Both of us get one claim of our own that we have 30 minutes to debate with the other side. After Vashon's claim, we'll go to my claim. Are you ready?
Yes, sir. Let's.
And so, like this kid here, he's got a huge following, and now he can grab anybody he wants. He'll go on to any show, and he's actually he's been doing this as long as Charlie Kirk has been going.
But that's his freaking job. He probably does it 60 hours a week. So
Yep.
It's
He
like
does.
studying for the SATs. To get good, you need to take like dozens of practice. This guy knows every talking point on both sides. He knows if somebody throws out this, he can throw out this. He knows, Charlie Kirk knew every freaking thing that some college kid might say to him, and Charlie Kirk knew how to dance back.
But even
So
to your
I will
point,
disagree that
Toby, because Steven Crowder was a right-wing influencer who had 5.8 million subscribers on YouTube and 2.5 million on X, and he's the first one, it seems, back in 2017 that was inviting college students to debate him while sitting at a table decorated with a sign that read "Change My Mind." So apparently, the Kirk borrowed that.
There are plenty of them out there, but the thing is, Charlie Kirk took the mantle because they pushed him out there because he started Turning Point USA, and that became the same. That is. Once he started that and got the backing from everybody, of course, he became the god of, he is the master. No, he's not. This is the same. He did the same thing everybody else is doing. But talking about Charlie Kirk and what he knew and what he didn't, Charlie Kirk really made up stuff. And that's the thing. That's the problem, is that this myth about who he was and what he said, if you fact check Charlie Kirk, I mean, on a lot of these things that he said, he made up stuff. He didn't know what he did. And to take it back to, I guess, what we went through today, what we were discussing today, when I tried to hammer home, give me data, don't give me this back end stuff, because it happens on both. People do it on both sides. People do gaslight on both sides. One gaslights more than the other, however, which is what is going on the right, especially around Donald Trump. And Charlie Kirk was a master at gaslighting, because what he did is he gave you anecdotes, emotional anecdotes, as a response instead of giving you data or facts and figures. When he talked about, like if you listen to some of his stuff, and he talked about, when I get on an airplane and I'm nervous about seeing a black pilot and stuff like that, he went down an emotional range about that, and that hit people in a way. And then he tried to make it as if they lowered standards just to allow this black man in. No, they didn't. They didn't lower any standards. And the whole thing around what DEI was, he misrepresented, but he played into the fears and the emotions of the individuals that he was talking to, because he played the whole great white.
It's like being a stand-up comedian where
Yeah,
work
definitely.
on your act. You go out 5 nights, 6 nights a week, and you do a set, and you learn what works and what doesn't. Charlie Kirk is out there all the time, and he found out which of his arguments, like Jacoby says, were the most compelling to an audience.
And I guess that's the question, that's because we've been doing the same thing, apparently, Jacoby, that this company Jubilee has been doing, but Jubilee's actually made a lot of money off of what they've been doing, whereas I don't know that Nick and the rest of the crew of Pod TV is making the money, because the Jubilee is basically a Los Angeles-based digital media studio, and they created that series called Surrounded, which features one person debating the rotating cast of 25 opponents. So they would find somebody like the super liberal or super conservative, and they'll take them to not even the conservative studio. They'll just take them anywhere and put them in front of these 25 people, and they will debate them and everything. So it's a rotating cast of 25 opponents, and like I said, we've got a rotating cast of about 8 opponents.
Yeah, what Jubilee did was the 1 verse 20. They did other things, but what took off, because we're in this political theater, and that's what our fun is now, and that's what's drawing the eyeballs. They found a niche.
Right.
And once they found that niche, they pushed it out. The 1 verse 20, if you notice, they've done a 1 verse 20 with anti-vaxxers. They've done a 1 verse 20 with Christians and an atheist. They've done a 1 verse 20, but we don't talk about those. We talk about when Charlie Kirk was on there a couple of years ago. There's that one. We talk about the one where Mehdi Hassan was on. That's a big one that took off like crazy.
Right.
So there are other ones that talks about politics, and that's what they found their niche. They do some other stuff, but yeah, that's what Jubilee does. But what Jubilee did is they found something. What Pod TV has done is they haven't figured out what they want to do. So it's hard.
And then also figure out their demographics, because even prior to these USA, the Democratic
Jubilee didn't figure out his demographics.
conducted
Jubilee
interviews of
figured out
1,000 young voters to gauge their voting viewing habits on YouTube, and it found out that a lot of people, surprisingly, and by the way, Rick, why aren't you at the Vogue a big event in LA, because that's going on this week as well. The Vogue is doing their big LA convention and everything. So I saw
most days I barely get my pants on. So
that's why you're not over at the Vogue thing. But yeah, they found that
that's
in
my
addition
wife.
to beauty and fashion content and videos with financial advice, which we know a lot of people want, that's part of the reason they created this network and everything, was that a lot of people liked watching debates. And even when I'm on TikTok, I see a lot of people they're like even sometimes doing these minute contests where they're debating each other, and they have like a time limit. So it's almost like
people don't want to. On my show, I try to get people to keep their comments to like 30 seconds. Lance has started using a stopwatch.
Right.
So again, Jubilee found a niche. They found a rule set that they play with the 1 verse 20. You get voted out. Once you're voted out, everybody stops, you rotate. Again, Pod TV doesn't have a niche. They haven't figured out what they want to do. Is it a free-for-all? Is it, hey, we're going to talk about a couple of topics? Because, I mean, we get to a topic and then we shift and then we shift and then we shift rather than staying on a topic. Or, I mean, it's just, we have to figure out what is the niche? What's going to grab people? If we're not going to figure that out and ride with it and commit to it fully, we're still just going to be a bunch of talking heads. Just, hey, what do you got to say? What do you got to say? Hey, let's talk over each other. Hey, I'm just going to ramble.
Yeah, what if we went with a clock where nobody could speak longer than 30 seconds at a time? Boom, boom, boom. And then you'd be the referee, and you'd shut the mic off after 30, and somebody else would get it. Would that help? I don't know.
I mean, it could. And I think it'd be kind of neat if I tried to suggest it years ago. I was like, hey, look, we can run a picker wheel. We put 4 topics on that picker wheel. Every show, we're just hitting those 4 topics. Everybody knows those 4 topics before we come in. I mean, doing multiple news stories.
Well, right now, the picker wheel is basically my news report, because as I noticed, Rick usually picks off or Sasha does whatever I have talked about in that 10-minute monologue and everything like that. So that's become our semi-picker wheel and everything like that.
Our show has the last 3 times we've done it, we've added a bikini girl because Lance draws her, and it has gotten a lot more people checking us out, but they don't stick around. They come and they're like, well, wait, this is just guys arguing on either side of a bikini girl. I can't, that's
again, the reason I suggest that picker wheel isn't because it's because it gives everybody 4 stories to think about and not a whole bunch to say, let me grab this one. Then on top of that, you're not each time you rotate, you're rotating to the next story. That means the last thing that we talked about is over. We're not talking about, stuff over here anymore. We're talking about this topic. That topic pops up at the bottom. It makes it easier for people to follow as they watch. So then you're going through each topic, and you're not really rotating through a whole bunch of stories of, hey, look, you talked about this at the beginning. Let's now talk about this. Okay, well, now we talked about this. Let's go back and talk about this and add this to this and this. And then it just becomes a
Well,
big company.
ironically, I agree with you, Jacoby, that can work. But ironically, one of the reasons, and I'm partially doing this because y'all have done it on some of your own shows and everything, but part of the reason that the online dinner party, which is my personal Wednesday show, works is because I invite people using those sources that I just said, including my personal friends and everything like that, but also podcast guests that don't know each other, and I allow them to have a conversation with each other. So it's my version of what is, instead of living in an apartment, I lived in a house and I invited friends over, and you just had like a dinner party and everything. So that becomes I can't tell you how many times I get letters from the guests afterwards that they enjoyed that ability to have a free-flowing conversation. It kind of reminded them of like the Charlie Carroll.
That becomes a segment. That doesn't become the whole show. That's the thing. If something becomes a segment, not the whole show, that's different. You're like, hey, we're going to have a talking segment. That becomes a segment of you take 20 minutes, have a free-flowing conversation. Now we're going to get to this debate style. Here's our wheel. These are our 4 topics.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But that's why I'm saying that ironically, the reason that the show has been successful and I get the emails that I get is because it doesn't become a debate show. Like I let people just bring out their own viewpoints, but they're not debating each other. Like they just might be curious about what a person's doing. Like when I had the conductor on with the business person on and everything. So the business person needs to know about how to make their business more successful. I mean, the director needs to know how to make their business more successful, and the business person used to be a failed actor.
So the point being, what is the point of the show? Is the show to make the people, your guests, happy, or is it to garner more viewers? And if it's to garner more viewers, then pointing to the emails that you receive, oh, it was a fun show, let's about that, having that free flow, but you're still not getting viewers, then you're going to have to change up, because then the show is it's again, what is the point of the show? Is it to try and gain 1 million point some odd viewers, or is it just hey, I got a couple of emails from the people, we had a good discussion, it was good to meet you, and but still no viewers. So that's the point I'm trying to make, is that, hey, throw this in, could be a twist for the viewers to attract more people. And yes, people get accustomed to your show, regardless of they enjoyed the free-flowing portion, make it a segment. And okay, you got a free-flowing portion that's about 20 minutes long, and then 40 minutes you're running a show of, hey, this is our topic, let's go. This is our topic, let's go. This is our topic, let's go. Boom. Who scored the most? Yay! It just becomes, what is the point? What do you want to do?
Yeah, that makes sense and everything like that. But like I said, and some of the shows do have segments, because I know like Coco usually interviews 3 people, and her show is a music entertainment show, and she usually has 3 guests. Now she has running times where she's had too many guests because it's only an hour show. So that's part of what our conversation has been, because if she's had 4 or 5 guests, then it becomes like, do they have enough time to get whatever they're selling or their point of view across? Because
do pod TV shows have a reliable metric, or are we still just trying like grabbing numbers off of wherever we are?
We're grabbing numbers off of wherever we are, whether that's Vimeo, whether that's Facebook, whether that's a number of other things. I mean, I know that there are a couple of what do you call them? Tools that will allow you to get the metrics of different shows. I mean, I just mentioned some of those, like even with Jubilee and stuff, but I don't know of a Nielsen rating for cable for live streaming as of yet. I know that there's some out there, but I just haven't seen them or know what they are as of yet. But that doesn't mean I'm not looking for them. So if anybody's watching this and knows any, let me know.
Well, I mean, you can get your metrics for. I mean, another thing,
part of the metrics is that they come from different sources. You even heard Nick say that he pushes them out to various Facebook groups and everything like that. So those different Facebook groups will have the metrics. Now, how much he talks to those groups to get their metrics, I would say probably not any, but that's just me guessing.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. If you begin to diversify everything that you're doing and there's no central location for you to grab stuff,
right,
you're going to miss out.
Right, and I agree with that.
I mean, a lot of people end up posting a lot of their stuff directly on YouTube. Mm-hmm. And just ride with the YouTube numbers.
And but then that became a whole argument an argument within management, because they felt that they didn't get the numbers from the YouTube because it was going to the parties to YouTube. So like if it was going to the parties YouTube, then the founders of this network felt that they weren't getting those metrics because those metrics are.
That becomes an issue. Hence the reason why I tried to suggest the other time is that Pod TV should be a website.
It is a website, and in addition to other things. But you're saying exclusive. You're saying exclusively
a website that you create, because when you're talking about not having the metrics from the other users and so on and so forth, those metrics could be used to sell the advertisements, and that's what Pod TV is. It's, hey, we're just this website. We don't have our own channel, so on and so forth. We're just like Tubi. We sign these contracts for these people to distribute their videos or their podcasts, and we've got them exclusively, and we're going to market them. That's just a website. That's Tubi, and not, hey, let's watch a Tubi a Tubi podcast of the channel that I want to watch.
Gotcha. And that's a different whole discussion, because some people are very excited about having their own Roku station.
I'm going to go sign off. And
well, on that note, we're going to get out of here. We had a fun media conversation. I got to get ready to do that.
All right. See you tomorrow. Thank you.